perspective, that's at one level, and at the second level, at an entry level itself, when it comes to the people who are coming and getting recruited as fresh grads, how they need to be seen, what kind of test questionnaires that needs to be developed from the talent philosophy perspective. And based on those criteria, recruitment philosophy will be built into the talent management. It is not just that you need to have one of these into your talent management philosophy or vision. All four can be included, and an organization should itself start setting up goals once when they start implementing the talent management processes in the organization to where we are right now and to where we need to go. For example, if the organization feels that the talent management processes needs to cover 50% of the people in the organization, how do we attain that 50%? In 2 years' time, 3 years' time? That needs to be specified. That can be one of the goals. And the other goal will evolve out of the current level at which the talent management is there based on the assessment, based on the criteria of assessment the organization is planning to use. For example, I would come to that in future slides today, but there are several techniques and several tools available to choose from. Here again, the best tool that is required for the organization is chosen by the top management of the people because they know that what is required of the organization. How do we build a talent management process? At the center point, you need to identify what kind of capability framework that needs to be built in the organization. Depending on the business the organization is, depending on the people organization has, and depending on the current level of capability and the competency people have, that framework will be developed, put down into processes, and next process will be to assess are these framework culturally fitting in the organization. How do you make that cultural fit? It's not easy, but it's not difficult too. Once when you build the capability framework, from there you get to know the culture the organization needs. For a startup organization, it's not difficult because you've got to justify the culture. But for an organization which has already gone into the culture, an organization which has been existing for years, have developed a culture, a pattern of culture, and that needs to be fit into the capability framework, without which the framework is not complete. And motivational fits. Define the motivational factors organization needs. Each organization differs from one to other. One of the examples I can give is the GE or the Procter & Gamble, which fixed their motivation before they could start on their talent management processes. And what kind of motivating factors that needs to be put into the people in the organization. And the capability framework was covered with those kind of factors that needs to motivate people in the organization. And especially when it comes to motivating factors, it vastly differs from organization to organization. And this is where the functional heads, the CEO of the organization needs to spend a lot of time in understanding the factors that would motivate people in the organization. Part of the framework will include identify high, mid, and low performers and help the low performers move up. As I said, there are several tools that has been developed world over to identify performers in the organization and where do they stand. High performers are high flyers in the organization, and primarily most of you or most of the organization would experience, if they are not cared for attrition levels are pretty high at that level. And the measurement as well as the talent motivational factors that needs to keep that going is completely different from the rest of the people at the organization. That also goes to say that we just do not ensure that we take care of them. We need to take care of the mid and low level performers. Here is a criteria where the organization itself will become matured when they start taking care for the mid-level and the lower-level performers, and more so help the performers on the lower side to move up the value chain. Why we need to do that? Organization has spent and invested lots of resources into bringing in people into the organization. And it is not always that all the people will turn out to be high performers in the organization. Interview process and other recruitment process and selection process would help in assessing about 30 to 40% of the capability of the person who's coming. Balance, it's more a risk factor. At the same time, the judgment of the people who are assessing the candidates to bring in the people into the organization. It is a feel-good factor that people who walk into the organization turn out to be high performers. But at the same time, we should also have in hand that we find low performers among the people who have been recruited into the organization. And managing low performers, understanding their requirement, understanding their capability, and then developing needs, the development needs for those people is high level of importance. And once when an organization matures in that criteria, in that area, the organization will be respected for being the best employer among the industry players. Next is assess the core HR processes: recruiting, interviewing, and hiring. What are we recruiting for? And is the interviewing processes matching up to what we are recruiting for? And hiring of people, is it just that they need to come into the organization and they need to come into the organization and then start producing, start becoming productive, or it is just that we need people in the organization so that the business revenues are fulfilled, right? So that processes needs to be defined very clearly. As long as you have growth-oriented definitions and processes that supports growth that you put into recruiting, interviewing, hiring, the job is well done there. Develop specific tools and training to help make smart hiring decisions. There are several tools, as I said, which is coming from the talent management perspective and talent development perspective, especially for hiring. Tools are available, and one can either buy those tools from the market, or one can even develop those tools from within the organizational expertise and then start utilizing for recruiting people in the organization. Some of the examples are the psychometric test, the engineering, if it's an engineering company, the engineering test. If it is marketing organization, the test papers on the marketing, that is more on the written side. At the same time, people who are conducting interviews, primarily the interviewers, need also go through a complete training process on interviewing skills and areas one need to look for in making the interview process a very positive process for both the interviewers as well as the person who's coming in to be. And here I would like to say that whether you accept a candidate or reject a candidate, branding exercise takes place, and treatment of the candidate is at that most important. One should feel that the organization has got definite development processes and talent management process in the organization the moment they start taking interviews with the organization. Design behavioral-based interviewing and training skills. First of all, when it comes to behavioral skills, organization, it is first of all easy to take the best practices where other organization has been successful. But I would say that every organization must be unique in defining their behavioral pattern. And once when they define the behavioral pattern, what is expected of the employees as well as the employer, interviewing pattern will also be designed and defined to suit the behavioral patterns that has been defined in the organization. That would help a lot in bringing the right type of candidates to the organization, and then that's practically half job done. Design and develop specific onboarding programs to reduce turnover. Most of you would have come across people leaving the organization in less than 3 months or less than 6 months after joining. And this is a result of the onboarding not happened at all or onboarding not being handled properly. Onboarding is an exercise. It can take longer time. Some of the organizations I've gone through has a 3 to 4 days onboarding program where during the onboarding process, one meets the senior executives of the organization, one gets to know the culture of the organization, practices of the organization, various functions in the organization, various processes in the organization, and finally, how they have to conduct themselves in the organization in terms of their behavioral aspects. This would do a great deal in making the person feel that they have walked into the right organization. And more importantly, here is where one needs to carefully talk about the employee branding in the organization and start creating a sense of belonging right from the day one of joining. Make every experience of the employee to choose us as an employer of choice. It's a concluded fact that every employer wants to prove themselves they are the best employer in the industrial segment or the chosen area. But how do they ensure that employees or the people who are walking into the organization experience the same? How do they ensure that people know about this organization even before they could join? There are a lot of areas where one can choose from. Start propagating about the choices that are available in the organization. Make people know how employer treats people in the organization, and make our own employees speak for it, so that people who are looking forward to join the organization or people who are joining the organization will start already feeling that here is an employer of choice, and I think this is a company I should work for. It may not turn out to be that everybody who's looking for employment in the organization would like to do that. The person who's walking in, a person who's looking forward, may not like the culture, that's fine. But as long as majority of the people who are showing an organization start liking, that's a win strategy. Develop and implement employer branding programs, internally as well as externally. Both is very important. Internally, right from the employee down to the families of the employee, one should start looking at strategies to ensuring that employer branding starts from getting into giving the right type of merchandise to the people, to the employees in the organization, to designing and developing growth-oriented programs from a career perspective, and then showcasing to the employees that the employer cares for not only just outside of the organization but inside of the organization too. External branding programs comes from participating in seminars, participating in industrial fairs, and participating in universities, in making the general public aware about organization as an employer. What does all these leads to? It leads to improved processes in the organization. One thing about processes, we call in our organization, it's a business improvement process, and it needs to be continuously put in place. There is no end to it. Once when you identify a process, define goals and KPIs for the processes, start implementing it and executing it, one has to start searching for new processes. Similarly, when it comes to talent management and employee branding, continuous improvement of processes, continuous identifying of processes will help in employees seeing new things that is being built into the organization. Level-specific program. When we say level, there are two types of levels. One is the hierarchical level in the organization, and other one is the level from the point of view of talent management, the high performers, mid performers, and the low-end performers. Such specific programs in two-dimensional needs to be put in place, which will work a lot in making the people build their sense of belonging as well as get into a high level of job satisfaction. It leads to greater improvement in performance, primarily the productivity of the people, what they were at the beginning and what they aspire to be once when the growth plans have been attained. And also you will experience a high employee engagement from the point of view of how much they are committed to the job, how much they are committed to the organization, as well as to colleagues, peers in the organization. I'm going to take you through 7 steps in going through a talent management process. And these are not defined or static steps. These are something which I thought are some of the practices that is done across the world. But some of you can bring in more steps into it, but I thought these 7 would be good to communicate to you all. Determine benchmarks for talent. What are the key pillars involved in each role, and at which level do you want each manager based on title to be an expert? This takes time. How do we benchmark? In whatever industry perspective the organization is in. Try to identify those industry, get the best practices from the people in the industry, and identify how people rate talent in the industry. And define the pillars of talent management. When I say the pillars, what would make the talent management go stronger and have a longevity in the organization? Primarily choosing the key tool that you need to assess people, how you're going to assess the people, whether you're going to have the cultural perspective, or whether you're going to have the performance perspective, or whether you're going to have an overall business perspective into the talent management process, that needs to be defined. And those are the pillars that would take the organization to greater heights from a talent management perspective. And at which level do you want each manager to be an expert? One should strongly believe that when we talk about managers or anybody senior in an organization, is not necessarily an expert in all the areas. So we need to develop pockets of expertise, pockets of center of excellence, and develop managers to be a star in those kind of areas and become an expert there, and each of them get recognized for that. As I said in the slide, this process needs a lot of attention, a lot of mind, and it takes a lot of time. But once when you do this, go through this first step, foundation for a talent management program is already laid. On to the second step, make a company-wide plan on succession planning, create guidelines for promotion, bonus plans, talent reviews, learning and development. So let me take one after the other. Succession planning is a serious attempt, just not at the senior level, but at every level in the organization, right from the entry level to the topmost level. There are types of organization where they define the succession planning, they identify the successors, and they inform the successors that where they're going to be led with the organization in the next 1 year's time or 2 years' time. There are organizations who would keep this concept absolutely confidential, but work behind the scenes to ensure that there are successors plugged at each level and the development plans are defined for those successors, and then work towards that. There's a third type of organization which does half of both, which means that the succession plan criteria for the person where they're going to go will be kept absolutely confidential, but the development plans will be kept absolutely open. Depends on the culture of the organization, depends on the management philosophy of the organization. One can choose from either of these three. But let me tell you, all three are pretty successful models. Step 3. Once when we start rolling out the talent management processes, internal talent review processes needs to be defined. Few organizations do it on an annualized basis, and few organizations do it on a twice annual basis. And when we go for twice annual basis, one of those will be rigorous, and annual plans will be defined during the review process, and the second one will be doing an interim to check if everything is going as per the plan, if everything is going as scheduled, and take corrective actions during the interim review. This would provide a great deal of corrective actions during the mid-year so that towards the end of the year, plans are achieved. If you ask me, this is a better method, having twice a year, than just going by doing a talent review on once a year basis. Work with all the managers to benchmark employees and identify the top performers, high potential candidates. Ensure that all managers are aligned. There are many tools, processes, templates out there to help you with these processes. This should be an executive senior management discussion so you can really compare talent from multiple teams and have a consistent evaluation among all employees. Start with your most senior managers and work your way through each level. Mind you, HR should be the people who will be managing these conversations, because HR should be seen A, at the base level as facilitators, and B, at the highest level as people who are promoting talent management processes in the organization. And while we do the talent review, people in the organization, from the high potential employees, emerging leaders, mid-level employees, and the lower performers are completely assessed. This is done during the annual review. During the mid-year review, those employees or those areas where there are concerns, where there are corrections required, will be taken up for consideration and discussed, and corrective action will be planned during the mid-year for next 6 months, so that such employees come up to speed during the annual review period. And this cycle will be of great importance. And in between these two cycles, there is a management review, which doesn't involve reviewing people, but the management, top management of the organization meets and then make an assessment that if all the planned activities are going in the right direction, in consultation with some of the senior managers in the organization. And then the review is being done right from the availability of resources, primarily the tools, procedures, processes, people, and even the money factor, to ensure that talent management process is being conducted without any break. Step 4 is again a time-consuming factor. You need to ensure that managers in the organization are coached completely, have a very high level of understanding of the talent management processes in the organization, and also get their commitment to roll out the process in the organization. It's most important that your managers have a complete trust and faith in the processes your top management has developed. Here is a do or break situation, and the intention to ensure that managers do it must be at the top priority of the top management. So coach your managers how to have conversation with all the employees. So once when you have the managers believe and have a high level of trust in the systems that's been developed in the organization, next level is they need to have a meaningful conversation with the employees. Especially when it comes to our organization here, we have a complete deck and a coaching section for half a day, almost for 3 hours, coaching the managers in how they need to have a conversation, kind of questions that need to ask to the people, and as well as how they can ensure that the people are grown in the organization. Especially those high potential individuals, and take them through template succession plans and determine their 1 to 3 year plans. Means the manager will be responsible for matching the organizational goals with the plans the employees got from a growth perspective, and define the development plans to match that. Work to have a consistent strategy on getting these candidates additional exposure and opportunities based on their long-term talent to truly grow them into your company's future leaders. The best example I can talk about here is the practice GE has got. They have been practicing this for years and years, and there are several books people have written from a GE perspective. One of the books that I read recently is recently missed about 8-9 months back. The book is named as Talent Masters, authored by Ram Charan, where a great deal of practices in GE is put into that book. So it has got a lot of leaders who have developed themselves in trying situations, in getting into situations which they wouldn't have dreamt about. An organization allows such practices among the leaders, and they have become top-class leaders in the organization. Some of them would have left GE, but at the end of the day, the practice and the coaching they have got from the organization goes a long way into their personal career. Templates, training, and education is very important at this step, as some managers may be leading high potential candidates, but very important, they themselves might be a steady Eddie. When I say they'll be just making things, and they'll be just a high-level performer, need not necessarily be a high-potential manager, but they'll be managing a high-potential employee. That's where the biggest challenge of a manager comes, and organization should help such managers to come out with high flying colors in managing high potentials in the organization. Step 5, when new business is secured or a promotion is justified, ensure that you look at those ready and willing candidates who have the right skills and the right aptitude to move into the role. Base your promotion on fit and talent versus things like tenure. Most of the organization have or has given away the process of utilizing tenure as a criteria for going up the ladder. And here I would also say that organizations should look for lateral movement of people in the organization so that employees engage themselves in learning newer techniques, newer talent, and then building a robust base to grow the organization into a more generic role. That would help people also realize their potential as well as realize their dream that they had while joining the organization. Step 6, as I told at the beginning, visit your talent review annually to revisit how you are doing on your strategy and reevaluate your team's growth over the past year. Very important. Assessment of the talent review system itself, or the success of a talent review system itself, is the result of the growth the team has experienced. And that needs to be assessed on a year-on-year basis so that the management gets to know where do they stand from implementing the talent management perspective. Without this assessment on an annualized basis, no talent management system is successful. And finally, step 7, repeat, repeat, repeat. Remember that training and development of your managers and support from HR manager lead is very key to lead all the change management necessary to properly build and execute a strong talent management strategy. This is a different way of thinking, and thus this strategy will take time and needs alignment between HR and senior leaders in developing the organizational plan and managing this change for your organization. What I'm trying to say is one must completely believe in the process, philosophy, and vision one has put into the talent management. There would be great deal of roadblocks, great deal of bottlenecks will be available, but one should ensure that they overcome these, consider those as a leading problem and an experience in implementing a very big initiative in the organization. And it would take a long time to achieve success. It is not a short-term success. You cannot get a short-term result out of a talent management process. It is a cycle of 3 to 4 years by the time the talent management process matures. And once when the process matures, you must find room for newer definitions of talent management and start implementing it, which means that you ought to go back to the basic and then start moving upwards. Tools and research. If one goes to consulting organization or the website, there are many assessment and processes out there to support your talent management strategy. There are 9-box strategy, there are MBT, so many of them. I don't want to specify or dwell on any because one needs to choose the right tool that is required for the organization. Remember to use tools and research. Research, have a plan, and then work that plan. How do you see an optimal workforce? At the left hand, you see that we start with the business goals and align our people, our processes, our talent management philosophy to the business goals and move on to developing people, leadership and succession planning, career planning, performance management. Assess the people, assess the workforce planning, assess the talent analytics, and acquire talent sourcing, contingent labor program, selection and onboarding. Ultimately,